How about 3 projects in one panel? Lila Tueller is here today to talk about her new fabric line and talk about her fabric panel that includes 2 cosmetic cases and 1 sunglass case with all the instructions of how to make it. So I'm so glad you're here with us today, Lila.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
So tell me your inspiration behind this fabric panel and your fabric line.
Okay, well, I knew that it was going to be a fall collection, and so the colors are a little deeper, a little richer. I still like, the pops of color, which is just kind of, my signature style. But we did go into a little bit more depth in this collection. And, for me, it's always just contrast and color. And I love flowers, so there's always flowers. And that's basically, I just start kind of doodling and it all comes together eventually.
And look at, you're wearing your beautiful
Yes.
fabric line, Fiona's Fancy, and I
Yeah.
love it.
This is the funked out peasant blouse pattern and done up in the blue colorway of Fiona's.
It's very beautiful.
Thank you.
I love this fabric panel, and it comes in 3 different colorways, and it's already has the prints on it, and they're adorable. So
Yeah.
show me how you made them, and tell me why you like to sew with laminates.
Okay. Well, I love laminates mainly because of the way that the finished product is so durable, and you're able to just wipe it off. It doesn't get dirty from your fingers, or if you spill something on it, you just wipe it clean. So it's just a product that you can use and enjoy for a long time when you have it finished. And it's really easy to sew on. It's very lightweight and flexible. You don't need any special tools. It's great stuff. So I really like it.
Okay, well show us how you made.
Okay. Well, on the panel,
project.
you have 3 options, 3 projects, 2 cosmetic cases and a sunglass case. So you choose which one you want, and you cut out the pieces. There's just 2 pieces for each of the...
And they're all labeled.
And they're all labeled, yeah. So let's say we're going to do the cosmetic case, the large one. You just find that on your panel and cut those out right along the edge. You don't have to add seam allowances. And so let's say I just did this purple section, orchid, I should say. Okay, this is the exterior of the bag, and this is the lining. So you just cut those out just like that. This happens to be cotton, and these are the laminates over here, and they look a little bit shinier and a little bit deeper color. So then the next step you would do is, with the exterior, you can fuse some fusible fleece on the back if you want to, and it adds a little bit of body.
Okay. But you don't have to use that.
No,
okay.
you don't have to. But that, I kind of like it. I like the substance that it gets. So I did that fusible thing on the back, and you always use a press cloth when you're fusing.
Because you wouldn't want to put the iron directly on there.
No, it would damage this, and so we don't. And it would also mess up your iron. It would get gummy. So we always put a press cloth over. And yes.
And I noticed you stitched around too.
I do. Just with the skip stitch, it's just kind of a basting that helps keep that fusible fleece on there so that it doesn't come undone on the corners or anything while you're moving this around.
Okay.
Okay, and then the next step is to take your zipper, this is a 9-inch zipper, and this is a 9-inch piece here. So you lay that face down at the top and line up the edges here.
Could you use a larger zipper if you...
You could use any length actually, and you just kind of tack it where you want it to end with stitching back and forth, and then cut it off.
All right.
So as long as you're not using a metal zipper, it's pretty easy to cut through.
Okay.
But you don't want to stitch through it because you'd probably break your needle. So it's good that it stops before the seam allowance here on both ends.
Okay.
So you take your zipper foot and stitch along there in a 1/4-inch seam allowance, and then you can turn this back like this. You want to, you can top stitch along the edge. You don't have to. And then you bring the bottom edge up, line it up along there, and flip it over and stitch it just like you did before along the edge with your zipper foot. Okay, and that is the interior. Now the next step of that is to pull the zipper up like this so that the teeth are at the top, and let's say it's stitched to here. Let's see, I have an actual sample of that right here. And when you do that, you pull it up like this, then you can sew your side seam. all the way through, okay? And the
Okay.
same thing on the other end.
Easy way to finish it.
Right, and I use a zipper foot for that too, just because then you can get right up to the edge there without a problem. And then the next step is the boxing step. So you just pull it apart like this and push that bottom in, and it kind of just naturally wants to fold like that. And the 2 points come together like this, and I lay those out and get my ruler and lay my ruler out, and where it's 2 inches from here to here, draw a line. And that's the line you're going to stitch on, and you do that on both of the points. Stitch on that line and then trim it off to about a 1/4 inch seam allowance on those 2 points. And that will give you the squared off bottom that you see here. Okay? And then you're going to do the same thing with the lining. But you don't have to put the zipper in, obviously. You can just stitch down the sides like this, and then, you know, trim your corners before you turn it and before you box it, and then open it out and do the same thing with the lining, just like that. Kind of square these up so that they're about the same, they look the same on those sides, and then when you stitch, open up the seam and back stitch. It's kind of hard for me to open that up, but anyway, and just back stitch over the seam so that it won't come apart when you trim it. Okay, now you have an interior lining and an exterior bag. So now you want to have your wrong side facing wrong side.
Okay.
Slide that lining inside of your bag. Poke it down in there good so the corners are all down in there deep and everything. And then you get your seam allowance here and open this up. And I like to kind of turn the edges of the zipper under like that, so they're hidden. They won't be seen when you sew this on.
Tip.
Okay, and then turn the seam allowance or the edge here under about a 1/2 inch and line those seams up and stick a pin through there to hold it while you do the same thing on this other side. Now this side's a little bit tricky because the zipper is there and it's kind of bulky and it makes it a little bit difficult to get started. So what I do is pin that seam allowance down on this side to hold it there, and then you just kind of line it up where the center of that zipper tape is and repin. And you're not going to start stitching there. You're going to bring it around to where you can line up these edges. It's kind of tricky. You just have to be a little bit patient here. Line those edges up along the stitching line, and that's where you're going to start stitching, is where it flattens out there. All along, so you're lining up the fold of this lining with the stitching line that you just made with the zipper. And don't worry about stitching this portion where it's kind of folded funny. Wait till it straightens out and stitch along here all the way to the edge, and you can keep going right over this side stitching. And we're talking about hand stitching with the needle and thread. It's the most clean way to finish this so that it will look nice when you're done. And when you get to the other side, stop at the same point and you just leave that unstitched right there.
Oh, okay.
And when you turn it right side out, it'll
Be
work.
tucked in there.
Trust me, it works
Okay.
great. Yep, and that will give you their finished bag like this, and it has the lining in there. There's no interior seams. A little bit of hand stitching around the edge, but it actually is easier to put together this way than if you tried to machine stitch it.
Yeah, and
And
you do it the same way for this one
For
too.
the small bag, same exact steps, nothing different.
Okay.
And then on this one, this is the laminate version, we have these little medallions. Aren't they kind of fun?
How did you make those?
Well, you cut them out. They're right here on the edge of the panel. You pick which one you want and cut out a front and a back. And then you cut them right out on those dotted lines. And then you're going to take some Peltex, which is a Pell-On product you can buy at your local fabric store. It's on a bolt, and it is double-sided fusible, and it's kind of stiff. Adds
Okay.
a lot of body to whatever you're going to use it in. Some people use it for a brim of the ball cap. There's a lot of applications, but for this, it works out really good. You just sandwich it between the two circles that you cut out, and you press that until it's fused. And then you can trim nice and neat with your scissors.
Okay.
And use a pressing cloth, of course. With laminate, you always do, but whenever I use a fusible material,
You don't
I
want
use
to
a
gum up
pressing
your
cloth.
machine.
Exactly.
Cute.
So that works really good for those, and I added a little jewel on there for fun, just to sparkle it up a little
And
bit.
how'd you do that?
That is an eyelet setting tool that you can get just a handheld tool at your local craft fabric store, and it just sets it in one little motion, and then you can put your jump ring in there and hook it to your zipper. Super easy. Add jewels to it if you want. You don't have to. There's purchase charms you can get at the craft store that would really be cute on there too to dangle. It just adds a little bit of fun to the personality to it.
Now show me this sunglass case.
Yeah, this is really fun and easier because it doesn't have a zipper.
Okay.
So you cut out your front and your lining once again, and it's just like we did before. There's two pieces to it, a lining and a front. And what I did is I took one of the tags, the sew-in tags that are also found on the panel, and just stitched it to the front just to add, I don't know, just kind of adds a contrast. And I put it there because when you fold this and you stitch it, it's going to be centered.
Centered, okay.
Like this, okay? So I put the fleece on the back once again on that piece, and then this piece is simply just folded in half and stitched down one side and across the bottom, but I left an opening, as you can see, in the side there, because we're going to turn the whole thing inside out later, and you're going to be glad that you have that little opening.
Stitch around, cut off your corners. Okay.
Cut off the corners, and
There's
then
some scissors,
thank you.
so you need those.
I do, and then we're going to stitch this together same way, down the side and across the bottom in a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Clip your corners.
Okay.
Okay, and then while this is right side in,
okay.
Yep, you did it. You're going to turn that, stick your scissors in there to help you push this in there because the laminate wants to stick. So you're going to go stick that inside of your pouch there, and oops, make sure your seams are lined up. There's going to be a seam here. So you're going to line this seam up with that seam. Okay. And once it's down in there, you're going to slide your foot inside here.
Okay.
So you're sliding this under your foot and just turn it as you stitch all the way around and open up the side seams when you get to them. And then you will be able to reach inside and pull the whole thing out through the opening.
Okay.
Okay. So
once it's pulled out, you're going to stitch the top.
Yes. When it's pulled out, stitch that closed with your machine. You don't have to hand stitch it. It's not going to show. It's going to be inside.
Okay.
Stitch real close there. And now you have a bag that looks like this without the cording yet. It looks just like this. You've gotten that stuffed back down inside of there. And now you need to make a casing for the cording, which is very simple. Same idea. Slip it inside under your foot, and now you're doing a little bit wider. It's about a 5/8 inch seam allowance there, all the way around. And then to get your cording in, you need a hole. So you take your seam ripper and pop about 4 stitches right there on one side. Don't pop those on the back, just that one. And now you can take your cording, the skinny, shiny, not slimy, shiny cording, and wrap the ends of it with tape so that you can stick your safety pin through there and it will hold. And just run it through, thread it through your casing and back out that same hole. And then since the ends are wrapped, they are easier to poke through the hole of your cord stop. And because it's kind of tricky, you have to hold it down with one hand really hard and poke those through with the other, and it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So it's better if you have the thinner cord.
And then you knot it off on the end.
I knot it on the end, and that's it.
Well,
so that one is really simple.
Great projects.
Fun.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Lila.
You are welcome.
This is a great project to give away for gifts or just have for yourself. And aren't they fashionable and beautiful? Just like to thank Lila Tueller for joining us today. And this is a great project that you can make.
Thank you.